Hello, this is Doug Davis of Caron Realty, broker in charge. And today I'm going to talk about HARPTA withholding as it applies to sellers. So first I'll start with definition, and then I'll tell you about what is it, and then how you deal with it when you're in escrow. So first of all, if you are a seller and you are not a Hawaii resident, you will have a withholding of your potential capital gain tax on the sale of your property. So I'll explain everything. I'll kind of do it over and again. This is a kind of a difficult thing to talk about. But HARPTA, so what is it? HARPTA is a withholding of your potential capital gain. So the state has their hand out when you sell, and they want their percent of the capital gain. The HARPTA, which is Hawaii Real Property Tax Act, and they currently withhold 7.25% of the gross sale price. It doesn't matter what you're netting or what your mortgage is, it's the gross. So it can be difficult for people that have a high mortgage and they're selling close to their mortgage price. It can be quite onerous. Or they might not even be able to sell it because of this withholding, but there's a way around it, and I'll tell you about that. So this is part of your closing costs and how you deal with it. So if you're a Hawaii resident and you're selling your home, this doesn't apply. You still have to pay tax, but you'll be paying your tax when you do your normal N1 form with the state of Hawaii, when you're disclosing what you earned and such in your normal calendar year when you pay your taxes. So, okay, so what is it? So let's be clear, this withholding, the HARPTA withholding, is not a tax. It's a percent that they withhold until you calculate what your exact tax is. So even if you're selling at a loss, you still have to withhold 7.25% of the gross sale price. All right, so okay, so figuring this out, your capital gain is calculated by subtracting what you paid for it way back and what you sold it for, right? And then over the years you've had expenses, so you can take that off to make your gain smaller. They allow you to do that. But then wait, you might have been taking depreciation. You have to add that back. So the leftover number, that's your capital gain. So maybe you made a profit, maybe you didn't, or maybe you had a loss. You still have to withhold that money. All right, so, but that's how you calculate that. And you probably want to get your tax person involved to make these calculations. They have to gather all the information that they filed in all of your tax forms over each year and add all those things up, like the depreciation and the expenses that you've taken over the years. Okay, so now that you get the number from either your calculation or your tax person, what do you do with it? Okay, so if you want to determine the exact tax, you can do that during escrow, but you've got to hurry. So you need to have all your ducks in a row. You need to have all of your numbers ready so you can plug them in to the tax office form. It's a N288 form, and there's several of them. I think A, B, and C. N288 A, B, and C. One of them should apply to you. And during escrow, if you fill these forms out, they're not that onerous. It's 2 pages, and you give that to the tax office for their evaluation and hopefully approval. If you make any mistakes, they reject it, and you got to start the process over again, fix it, and then resubmit. And each time you resubmit, they have maybe 10 business days to get back to you. They're pretty efficient there, though, so you usually get it. That form then, with their approval, stamp of approval from the tax office, can be used at escrow to either pay the exact tax. So maybe you only owe $1,000 and don't have to withhold $30,000. Then you pay that. Or if you have a tax loss, you pay $0 and there would be no withholding at all. So it's very important to do this during escrow. But tell you the truth, probably 95% of the people, they just have the money withheld and then they file the next tax year for the exact amount and just have their bookkeeper or CPA or tax person calculate it at that time. But if you need to do it during escrow, then there's this process that you can use. So let me give you an example. We recently sold a townhouse for $490,000, and 7.25% on that is just over $35,000. But their mortgage was very high, so doing the $35,000 would put them under, and they would have to bring money to the table to be able to sell this, and they didn't have extra money to do that. So it was imperative that they pay the exact amount, which in this case they had a tax loss, so they didn't owe any money. There was no capital gain. So they filed, filled out the form, sent it to the tax office, and by the way, it has to be a wet signature, no DocuSign, no, you can't email it over and print it here. It has to be sent over with a wet signature, which takes more days, right, for the mail time. And anyway, that helped them for doing that. At the end of this, I will have a cheat sheet on where and how to do it, with numbers and websites and the forms, so you can see some of the nitty-gritty detail if you want help doing this. Or if you do it with us, of course, we'll guide you through it. Well, that's about it. So that's the HARPTA withholding. It's not a tax, but it's for the capital gain that you may or may not have when you sell a property and you're not a resident of the state of Hawaii. This would be part of your closing costs and something that you would need to deal with if you're an out-of-state, non-Hawaii resident. So that's a lot of people here, a lot of investors, and that would be either US citizen or even foreigner if you're not a resident of the state of Hawaii. So this will happen. So again, you can either file and get the exact tax calculated through the N-288 form, or do it later after escrow, have them just withhold and they pay the tax office the 7.25%, and then it's up to you to get a refund next tax calendar. So there you have it. Get help from your CPA to do it, but I hope that helps you understand this. Well, that's it, and I hope to see you next week.